Nah, I do it different. Move like a legend, been plotting on how to take over, so no one could stop him. A gun to your head and a knife to your spine. You're mine. Now let's take this world one step at a time. Gorilla. Building like gorillas on the billing. New school, cause I'm here right now. Still cool when I twist with my style.
Yeah. What's up, man? I couldn't help myself. You know, I had to put a little bit of promo in there. But that's Ice Ice Baby by Gorilla Brown. I don't know what that was. Like, man's not really built like that. But anyway, here's the next question, my dude. Let's see. You were into spirit science back in the day, right? New Age, Indigo era, where do you actually stand spiritually? And I love that because everyone's like literally always trying to box you in spiritually nowadays. Like, you're New Age, or you're religious, or like you're traditional spiritual or something, right? And you've got to be something, or techno spiritual, science spiritual, whatever. But the reality is, they're all what they obviously are, just different understandings, right? So, you know, like I was raised Catholic and then became a Satanist, like the obvious, and this was, you know, pretty young, but like it's the obvious move, right? You go from believing in Catholic and Christ and thinking, well, this seems like some bullshit, and then you go, well, what's the opposite of that? And you go Satanism, like, oh yeah, now this seems like some bullshit. So then I went on to New Age, which was like that spirit science era, and that's the whole thing. That guy turned out to be a weirdo. It's a whole fucking thing, but if you do look into it, you'll see that the first is it like 8 things he did were actually based on someone else's already sort of established work. So, you know, that first bit wasn't him just talking shit. It started off based on something, and then he very quickly started doing his whatever crazy bullshit because he got the fame and it went to his head and he became a creep. But that first bit, like, to say what you want, it does have something that it's based on. Whether you believe where it's based on and where that comes from, that is where it is. Obviously, you know, that was just the era that we were going through. But yeah, anyway, that guy turned out to be a fucking weirdo, which, big surprise. Anybody who seems to get on that side just can't seem to hold it down. Like, anyway, by the by. So then went through the New Age a bit, and then like, you know, you very quickly realize with like those kinds of strong beliefs, like you see people on TikTok and they're like, you know, making hurricanes happen, like, oh, I'm Mr. Hurricane, like silly bullshit. And it's like, that's what we wish it was, in a sense. When you're going through that New Age era, you wish it like leads to, you know, super flashy superpowers, but in reality that's not how it works, right? So if you're paying attention, you very quickly realize that the New Age stuff doesn't work the way they're claiming it does, and brute forcing it doesn't work either. Like, there's no way to, you know, just because you really, really, really want to use telekinesis doesn't change the fact that there's some other reason that you can't. And obviously there's the skeptics out there go, well, yeah, that's physics. And it's like, well, yeah, exactly. Like, for that New Age belief to be true, it still has to overcome physics. Now, if it ever does, then they can claim it's true. But until it does, you know, in a real way, then we could never accept that as true, even if it's an interesting idea. And I think that's where a lot of people fall into this stuff. It's interesting. It's interesting to think you have these energy centers, and it's interesting to think you can manipulate energy in ways and do all this shit. So from that young age, coming out of school and stuff, you immediately go, wow, this is so interesting. It's like a whole new way of looking at life, even if it turns out a lot of it's just fiction and stuff. Like, how can you discern that when you're at that first point of discovery? You don't know until later when you start looking. And, you know, some people are like, you should never go down those avenues. If it's wrong, it's just wrong. But it's like, but some people believe you should explore them first and then determine if they're right or wrong, and everyone has their own way of doing that. But yeah, anyway, so I went from like the New Age, realized it like don't really work like that. You know, life slams you around and stuff, and I started thinking like, well, I know this stuff isn't total like BS, but also I know that a lot of this New Age interpretation is like, you know, it's like superhero shit. So what's the actual truth of it? So you start looking that way, and then you kind of funnily loop back around to religion. I never became back to being religious, but I started looking at religion again, like these world religions and these different belief systems, like why do they, why do people go for them, and why are they so, like, you know, big and stuff. You start looking back and looking at it differently now. You're not being indoctrinated by it, you're analyzing it outside of it. So then just the stuff to take away from there, but then you realize, well, even then, like, that picture is, it's fragmented into different cultures and different interpretations. So you can't step out of the world and then point to any of them and call them true, because they're all, none of them have truth anyway, as in they don't have the solid backing. They just have their own word, and then you can't point to any word and say that word's more right than that one, when neither of them have anything. If one of them could summon lightning from the heavens itself on the spot, then we might go, oh yeah, that guy's right. But because neither of them can actually do that in any observable way, then we can't call either of them right or wrong. We just can say, that's what you believe, that's what you've interpreted, that's what you believe, that's what you've interpreted, and everyone's entitled to that. But then you start looking, going, right, so they're kind of like the saying stuff, and some of it rhymes. Like I like to say, it's back in my mind, but it's actually a new thing I've started saying, because it's kind of irony, but things rhyme, so these religions all rhyme, but they're all telling, they're all singing a different song. So then you start looking further back, like where do these beliefs come from, and what's so on and so forth, and you do the digging, you do the research. Eventually I learned that the core thing of a lot of these belief systems is I guess it's just observation. It's just witnessing, right? That's I think that's literally a Christian thing, witness. It's kind of just about, like, it's right. They've kind of taken that and said, witness, but then obviously they've defined what counts as like divine within the scope of what you're witnessing, obviously. But to witness really is just to see and live and just an experience, just witness, like, so just observe. And then obviously you still got to be boots on the ground, live a life. So then you go, all right, so observation, getting info, taking things in. So then it's like, all right, how do I learn more? How do I grow from here, right? And that's the key, is the observation. You learn to open to things that you would otherwise close to. So for example, someone comes to you with a belief or an idea, a different minded person might immediately find that combative, or they don't want to hear it, right? But when you start observing, you don't immediately, obviously, whatever, but you open up to just hearing that, even if it's coming from something you was so far removed from you, you're now open to receive what's really going on. And then part of the spiritual aspect of the observation is, what is it that you're observing? Well, obviously religious people talk about God, and obviously, like, that's their interpretation of, like, a conscious being creating stuff for you to observe, and that's totally fair if you believe that. I personally developed more of an attitude of, like, the universe or reality is just kind of self-generating, I guess, like, and I don't, one thing about me is I don't pin to beliefs because I don't have any way of verifying. So that's just one model in my head of this reality kind of creating itself, and where, like, we get to be conscious inside of that as it churns and does what it does. But we probably also are it, like, it's like looking in on itself, kind of, like that kind of thing. So that's my understanding of, like, a God reality type thing. But obviously, pick a number from the heart, like, it could be anything. But with that, just having a concept like that, to look at what a God is and change it from the traditional to something totally different. You bring that with the observation, and you realize, I'm observing this thing that is beyond my understanding, right? You stop trying to attack it like it's separate from everybody. You stop going, there's a God who then created this, and then I'm in this, and then I'm interacting with this, but really I'm angry at this, or I want to get to this, or I want to. It's like, no, it's like in and fractaling in like multiple dimensions on itself. It's not just a 2D fractal or a Mandelbrot. It's so, like, that's what you're really observing. So then when you start realizing that, then you start to look back on all these wacky things people, like, are saying, like, the Secret was that was like a game changer when The Secret dropped, because now everyone had spiritual concepts in their orbit, even if they didn't understand the spiritual side. But they told you that, what your thoughts, create your reality, blah, blah, blah. and words of power and all this bullshit, right? But they didn't give you the framework. They just said that's what it is, and then everyone just said, "Oh, I'll just have to figure it out." Like people will tell you things like, I don't know. There's loads of little things people say. Like, I guess knowledge. Like the one that came to my mind is knowledge is power, and it's like, yeah, but they don't give you the framework to understand why knowledge becomes power. They just say it, and then everyone has to kind of go, well, I must just want, I just must want that because it leads to power, but they don't actually ABC know how it converts like that, because they don't tell you that stuff. They just like dropping shit to make themselves seem clever. But they might not understand it themselves. They're just probably, like most of the time, especially now, people just say things because they're buzzwords, even if they don't understand them. They just want it to look like, some rich kid who's already born rich wants you to think he earned it. He's going to say, yo, man, it was all this, but he's bullshitting you, obviously. All variations of that. So, yeah, like, when you get this observation-based understanding and you start, receiving, instead of trying to wrestle with this morphing thing, you realize that actually, yeah, all right, manipulating this thing, I can see how we interact with this thing and how we manipulate it, and people jump straight to thoughts and crazy shit, but first and foremost, like, if I want something to move, I have to go up to it and move it. That's a fundamental part of this. Like, I can't move that shit without going over there. So people talk about, telekinesis. It's like, well, how does telekinesis work in the 3D? Like, I use my mind to move my body to move the thing. Like, I'm already doing telekinesis. I'm trying to bypass that. I'm trying to use, like, what I perceive as a higher dimensional tool to interact with a lower dimensional world in an observable way within that world. And is that possible? That's remains to be seen, naturally. But it does tell you, like, also there are things here I can manipulate. I'm just trying to do it wrong. I'm trying to move that with my mind when I should be trying to move it with other things here that are already here to kind of do that, right? So then you start looking at, like, the secret and how to manipulate your reality and create things. Well, the first, like, there's rules to this stuff, right? I'm here saying it's this fractal ball doing shit, but when we actually observe the reality around us, it very quickly becomes obvious that there are, in fact, rules to it. I do have to get up and move things. Things do fall down. The sky is a certain color. Things do things in a what looks at us like a predictable, repeated way. So that implies that while we might be in this morphing thing, we're in a pocket of structure or perceived structure, right? So then if there's rules to this experience, then how do I use those rules, or how do I play by those rules to then make this reality morph a way that's more suitable for me? And then it fractals, because now there's so many ways that you could go about that, but you have to understand what it is you're trying to attack. So alright, start off very low level basic stuff. This is like, laws of power type stuff, right? I want to start a business, and I see that there's other competition, right? This guy's got a studio, he's got a studio, whatever, right? So, like, the first thing I start thinking is, like, who are these people, and how do they run things, and why do they charge what they charge, and who are they associated with, what's their customer base, where do they come from, are they traveling, is it big band, blah, 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 blah. If I'm operating on the right way and looking at reality, right, I need to be asking those questions to even start breaking into that stuff, and you might be a person who's plugged in on that level and go, oh, I already understand that, but there's many people who probably don't have that framework. They don't look at those things. They just, opening a business, just tell me stuff, all, just doing it by the cuff of the whatever, right? But really, a higher dimensional mind will look at all the things that they can see, and then the higher dimensional mind the higher in dimensions your mind goes, the more dimensions you're able to perceive of a situation and track all at once and stuff, So then you want to alter your reality to make things work. Well, like I say, on that level, then the obvious move is I need to use what I have available to make those things move how I want them to move. So one of the fundamental things is you don't have direct control over what other people do. You only control your meat suit. You can't put your head in their head and then control their meat suit, right? So I want him to, take a day off, right? I can't just, get in his head and shut the shop, but I can do things around him to convince him that I want him to shut shop. So now I'm manipulating reality, and I'm also technically manipulating free will, using the tools already available. I'm not trying to just bend stuff with my brain. I'm trying to use the tools already available to manipulate the reality by the rules it already presents. And you can extrapolate. I'm sure you can extrapolate from there. But again, to draw it back, to do all of those things, you must first even know you're looking for that. So that's that level of, you might call it social manipulation, and many people, that is where they operate. The slightly, you have the people who are just on with their day, not paying attention, and then you have the socially aware, like that's the next level of cognition, like you're looking for third parties and stuff. But then it goes like deeper and deeper and deeper, because obviously there's more to what we're doing than just the social part. Where do the ideas come from? What's fueling this social situation becomes another level, and how can you introduce things to things to change things, right? Because that is a lot of what the secret is. It's, can you manipulate people into giving you money? And then now we move back into the spiritual side. So, all right, you've got these ideas of how you can manipulate the world. You're now observing how your actions change the reality based on what you have available. But then you start looking even more abstract, like, so okay, if when I move that changes this, right? And then what? So then why is this situation here? What got moved where I wasn't looking to make this situation I wasn't expecting happen, right? And then that's when you broaden again and start looking for things that you can't even necessarily perceive directly anymore, but you can extrapolate, and you can get various bits of info that will, you the framework that will get you those answers. If you know, again, what you're even looking at to begin with, if you know it's fractal and you know free will isn't something you can directly violate, then you know that people are going to do things in ways that you genuinely might not be able to predict, because the way, like, they might just make one little move, flip a penny or something that changes the whole direction that you thought it was going to go in. And this is a real thing now. One of the, like, so now that's like the framework, but now I'm going to give you what I take away from those various observations. So I'm not telling you this is how you should see things. This is just how I kind of do it, right? So okay, let's get some bearings here. So when you understand that it's a fractal that's morphing, right? You understand that how it moves is, it's not just that it's random, it's reactive, is probably the best way to say it, right? It's not just if I move a physical object things change, but if I just make a certain decision, reality changes too. That, like, it's like this idea, like, this is kind of part of, like, what I think comes from the visual snow, because when you have visual snow, you have constant static, which makes reality feel just a little bit less real, right? Because it's like a constant TV stream. So it already has your mind going that way, like, this looks like kind of fakey, right? So obviously there's a lot going on here, so many fractals. So you're looking at it and you're realizing it's reactive, right? When I do a certain thing, people just, let's keep it to that level. Fuck it, people react to this shit. Never mind, some other, like, thing reacting. Just people react, right? And they don't necessarily all react how you would expect them to. So that whole best laid plans, like, you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then people are gonna, likely to react like this. But then you find out that they do it's totally not what you expected, or it's some are and some are, and it's random because it's fractal, right? So then you have to start experimenting, like, when I do this, or I say this, or I input this, like, how does that energy, I'm jumping to energy, but how does that exchange actually work? Like, what's really going on? What's the mechanism, right? Sorry, I'm looking at my WhatsApp. I shouldn't have that open. That distracted me. It's just open. I could see random messages, and I was like, when did I send that? Anyway. So again, this reality is reacting, and you're observing. You're realizing there's so many moving parts. Some you have no control over, and some you do. And you're thinking, how do I interact with this machine to make things I want to happen? And then this is where we get into the realm of what people call witchcraft and magic, right? This is like the obvious evolution, not the obvious. Sorry, this is like the, what do you say? Like, it's just the next evolution of concepts like the secret and manifesting and stuff, right? And it's the idea that you can do some combination of things to enact a reaction in reality that gives you what you want, right? Which is obviously what I've just been explaining to you, and that's what witchcraft is. But again, I've just given you all the framework to know what witchcraft is. So that's the idea. I get a candle, I get some herbs, I get some stuff, and now obviously a lot of witchcraft's based in talking to spirits because, all right, so now we're getting into energy. So obviously, you cotton on pretty quickly, like as you get older and get out of school and stuff. That there's more to like our reality than what they was telling us, right? We pick up on vibes and we get like gut feelings and like we can sometimes know things we shouldn't know. Like there's all kinds of kooky things that happen that because they didn't give us a framework when it mattered, we kind of just brush them off, or we don't tie them together, or we don't see. And because they tell us, oh, we didn't find nothing, we investigated and found nothing, so we just go, okay, and then we just kind of culturally brush those things off. And then on the other side, some cultures do the opposite and take, like, this is where the spirits come from. They take that and they go, this must be spirits, this must fit in with my religion or whatever, right? And they're all, everyone's interacting with the same shit. It's what it looks like. It's energy. It's another. I don't want to say dimension to reality, but I guess you could call it that. But really, it's still part of the 3D, and this is crucial, right? A lot of spiritual beliefs want you to look to other realities and find divinity there, because you ain't gonna find it here type of vibe, right? But it is here. It's everywhere. It's everything. It's in everything, and it's everywhere because that's what the substance of existing is, right? So we're all interacting with the same thing, but I think a lot of people really do need to be honest with themselves. What are the chances that the thing you're interacting with is what you think it is when you can't see it? You technically can barely hear it if it does say anything. You can't really perceive it in any meaningful way. And when you see these things in dreams, well, dreams have never been reliable in terms of what you're actually seeing. It's always been about the symbolism and the concept. So why you suddenly does this dream about this particular entity just like, oh, that one's obviously reliable? No, the knowledge and information might be, but if like, we contradict ourselves. If it was a spirit, then it would be able to present itself as anyone anywhere. So then why would you trust it in the first place? It contradicts your own beliefs. Believing in any person appearing in your dreams would just be silly when things can imitate anyone at any time whenever they want, right? So drop all that. Realize that dreams are more about the symbolism. That's well established, even mainstream stuff. That's not like some deep shit, but dreams are symbolism and messages and information and processing and all like there are a lot of things, but ultimately this idea that you're interacting with spirits, it just comes from the fact that you're interacting with something that seems reactive, that we can't perceive and we don't understand, and there's no backing to it other than people just writing, but I interacted with a tree spirit because he was near a tree or she was near a tree and stuff happens, so they think, oh, it must have been tree spirits, right? They don't know, but they're giving their best attempt, and everyone thinks they are, everyone likes to think they've got things sussed as much as they do, and they all want to make money too, so write books, right? But at the end of the day, the reality, if you are doing the observation rather than the issuing the dogma part, you realise that while things are reactive, they're not reacting in a way that patterns up with what people say. For example, you're supposed to be communicating with a Victorian spirit in a thing, but then, other things happen that have nothing to do with a Victorian spirit. Now, ghost hunting shit, like, I don't go for it. I think it's fun to watch though. If you like spooky vibes, I used to watch it growing up, Most Haunted and shit. Like, I know that's old school, but I used to like that stuff. But obviously, you very quickly realise they're just kicking rocks across the room and creating drama, right? But if like me and you, personally, with no cameras, went to an old building and started trying to interact with a Victorian spirit, we're both going to very quickly discover that it's not a Victorian spirit we're interacting with. If things start happening, which they probably would if we did it the way with someone like myself who knows what they're doing, we could get things to happen, but it's not going to be a Victorian spirit. He's not going to sit there going, oh yeah, he in my, like, that never happens, because that's not what you're interacting with in the first place. You are interacting with energies though, and can energies be independently sentient of like a biological being? Well, you tell me. Probably, right? But are those entities going to be anything like a human? Are they going to even be conscious? Are they going to be sentient like you? Are they going to perceive? If they live in a reality of like unseeing, invisible shit, then why would you be so arrogant? Sorry, I shouldn't be, I need to not be so hostile in my language. Why would you be so presumptuous as to think that it thinks like you or wants to even communicate with you? Like, you go to a tiger den and try to have a conversation with it, it's not going to entertain it, is it? It's just going to wonder why this thing's babbling at it while it's trying to suss out how to eat it. So, you know, we don't, you don't know, and we don't know what we're really interacting with because they've told us it's nothing, and we can't actually see these things. So we capture flashes of entities and apparitions as people claim to have done over the years, but they're all kind of unverified, unknown, and they're all shit quality. Can't really tell what we're seeing. Blah 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 blah. A million things under the sun. Hence why all this stuff is the paranormal and the pseudoscience and the out of the realm of mainstream science. But you know, what we call mainstream science is only literally government, but you know, funded and sanctioned science or whatever. It's not like the broad spectrum of everything ever, because a lot of stuff you can't touch without losing your funding, losing your reputation. You can't even look at certain stuff without pissing the system off. So some stuff just never gets explored, and they just say, "Ah, we didn't find nothing," when they do like a 10-minute thing, or they just lie and they just make it top secret if they find anything interesting or whatever it might be. And some things don't make it onto the books. You've heard of black budget projects, so then that means there's black budget results too. Like there's things that they won't tell you that they'll never go on record with. So, you know, there's levels to it as always. So anyway, you're doing this observation. You realize reality is reactive, and you've started exploring this idea of how can I manipulate reality on a deeper level than just socially. So you start looking into witchcraft and that kind of thing, rituals and stuff. Now, rituals are powerful. Magic does work, but only if you strip it of spirits and you strip it of like sparkly dust, right? It's not magic like movie magic. It's not Tinkerbell magic. It's not Harry Potter magic. It's none of those things, right? It's manipulation of reality. It's just using what tools are already available in this third dimension, and just using them to get to make things happen. I wouldn't say to get what you want. It's just to make things happen and move things around, right? So obviously when you realise that actually the witchcraft aspect, the different schools of witchcraft, actually none of them matter. They're all just different. Well, they do matter because they're different ways of accessing this stuff, but they don't matter in that none of them are particularly more right than the other or anything. They're all just doing the same thing with different lenses, which is, again, pulling on those threads, right? And the real reason those things work probably might surprise some people, loops right back to The Secret. The idea that you can manipulate reality just with your mind. So some people who went into the financial or businesses side of things, you know, throughout the time, probably heard concepts about like programming your mind to do certain things, or you know, implanting subconscious ideas into you so that you know, you're reprogramming your daily life and your way of thinking, right? But again, they don't give you the full story, because you probably would switch off if they started talking about altering reality and shit and voodoo and shit. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're accessing the same thing, like witchcraft. I can say magicians, but like witchcraft people are accessing. It's the secret. It's implanting things into your subconscious. One thing they don't really tell you is that implanting something into your subconscious isn't actually particularly easy, because it's subconscious. You don't have access to that part of your mind, and just trying to cram things in by repeating them in your head, it can have an effect on you, but it's not going to implant like a reality altering, like a perception altering thing in your subconscious, because your subconscious obviously knows you just fucking saying it over and over again. It doesn't care. Like, so that's actually probably one of the worst ways to actually make any effective change happen. But it can be really good for calming you down and just, you know, getting yourself in a good headspace. But it's not going to do those deep things you want it to do. That's why, again, magic and rituals become so powerful, because what you do when you're doing a ritual is you're creating a memory. You're not just saying a word over and over till you memorize it. You're creating a perceptual sensory experience that you're going to process in the subconscious. And when you're doing witchcraft, you're doing that ritual with an intent, and that's the idea. You're supposed to pin what you want to the memory, and then it goes into the subconscious and then alters you on your, you know, levels, which then alters your interaction with reality in ways that you're not even seeing. And this is one of the scary and dangerous parts about witchcraft that no one talks about. Everyone thinks it's safe. Just do a circle of salt and you'll be safe. No, that only works if spirits are there. Like, and I say it works if spirits are there, as in that only works if that version of spirits are there that are scared of salt or something, right? But they're non-corporeal beings. They're not scared of salt, right? Oh, your magical no, like, it's still just salt, but salt does have energetical effects. But why like, if you believed in demons, then why is salt going to stop a demon? He comes from hell, sulfur. It's like he's not going to. But anyway, silliness. I'm sorry. I was not meant to be hostile to these things. They just do your head in when you know, it just makes you think, come on, people. No offense. So yeah, you're creating these moments, and you know, you're putting yourself in a position where, right, now that I've done that, things are just gonna happen, and I don't have control over pretty much any of it now. I've done my part. I've planted the memory. I've planted the intention. It now has to, it's a seed. It has to grow. But the biggest, well, there's lots of obstacles to that make it really dangerous too. Not just your own intentions that might be wrong, or you might be asking for things that you can't actually get. We've all seen Obsession. Same idea. Obviously, without the theatrics. Thank God. Nah, because we all do it, right? So this is what I want to say. We all make bad wishes, and bad wishes. Sorry, then I'm thinking of Obsession. No, we all do spells that are not necessarily like the how can I put it? Like, there's rules to reality, right? And we do spells that break the rules, but the problem is none of us knew going in to when we did that love spell for our crush, or when we did that, I want some money spell. None of us knew the rules. Like, we didn't understand because we were fed the dogma that got us onto witchcraft. We didn't get the actual full scope of reality, which is you can't violate free will. You can manipulate reality around a person and try to lead them to make their own decision to fuck up or whatever, but you cannot directly make them do anything. And that's actually really obviously the message of Obsession. He did it the inverted way, which is, well, actually, what if your wishes did violate free will? And we saw the result, and it was really cool. Like that bit with the phone where everyone missed this, and there's a bit with the phone, and he's in car, and the guy's like, oh yeah, she's here, and he puts her on phone, and she's just screaming, and he's like, you want to talk to her? Like, that was telling you something. Like, he like, that's what would happen in a sacrificial ritual if they actually worked like that. If someone sacrifices a soul to a god somewhere, then the idea is that soul gets taken, goes into that god's world, and gets fucking fucked. And that's what that shows in that scene. She's there screaming because she's not in her body or whatever. She's in this fucking dungeon with this spirit guy he sacrificed her soul for his wish, right? That's what that really is. And there's another scene people miss where she's at the party and she goes, it's got me, and then she disappears again. Like, people are debating if she's in the body or not. It's very sort of clearly shown that she's not in her body, she's somewhere else, and she's snapping back to her body. She's still tied to her body, but people believe in astral projection. Astrally, she's in this place with this torturing thing making her scream, right? But people miss that, and maybe that was just like bots making people miss it. I don't know what people do. But yeah, funny that I'm saying I don't watch. I've started watching movies and shit very, very recently. That's a whole video for itself. But like, that 10 years without watching stuff, it is genuine. It's just nowadays, like, I've reached a point where it's like, now I'm just curious, like, what is Marvel? What is Avengers? Like, I hear about these things. I never saw them, so I've gone and watched like a couple of them. Well, I say couple, I kind of just binged like Avengers and shit. I just got into it because I was just like, oh, I remember this as a kid, and while it's McDonald's movies, like, fuck it, like, and I just sat through them, and yeah, they were alright. But like, that's like it, if you understand. In 10 years, that's like, and I didn't watch them at the time. I've watched them all now, and caught up to date, and then like, yeah, cool. And it's cool to have the framework to actually now watch it and see it as McDonald's movies rather than something to be excited about or get invested in. It's like, oh yeah, cool, I just had a Big Mac, yeah, that was great, Hulk smash, Big Mac. It's nice to be able to do that rather than be immersed. Like, I don't immerse, I just watch the spectacle. Cool. But yeah, that was a side note, because I did mention not watching stuff recently. Checked a few things out. And Obsession, I really, liked that YouTuber, that comedian guy. That's a bad idea or whatever. So when I didn't care about Obsession, I wasn't going to watch it or anything. Then I saw like he had made it. I was like, oh shit. Then I had to watch it then, because I just liked that guy back in like throughout the years when he's been active and shit. Anyway, silliness. So just like that movie, it's trying to show you, like, if spells really did work the way we all imagined them to work as youngsters doing magic spells, we would be fucking people up big time. So you can't violate free will. That's one of the things you're going to learn. And you can't ask for certain things because to get them would require violating free will. And that's where the idea of a backfiring spell comes from. People, again, not something people talk about often, but a lot of people who are in the magical world and the spiritual world don't realise that they're currently swimming in a sea of bad spells. People get cocky and they get shallow knowledge. They go on TikTok and they get shallow knowledge, just like, or even bullshit knowledge, just made up shit. A lot of that's made up as well. But people just get random shit and then go test it out without any framework or any foundation to fucking know what they're actually doing with it. So things get messy really quickly, and that's your typical person trying to curse their fucking school bully and make their crush fall in love with them and make $1 million, doesn't realize the threads they're pulling on. Like, that money has to come from somewhere. That bully has, like, things have to happen. You want your bully to go get beaten up, right? Or you want your co-worker to get mobbed. Like, well, someone's got to go make the decision to mob him. You're not just going to change their free will. And now you start to see how the peripherals all factor in. But then it's not just that. You realize that when you're doing magic that is intended to sort of affect another person, you don't realize what you're tugging on, right? I know you've probably seen that concept many times of this like cord coming from everyone, connecting everyone together, right? And while I'm not going to sit here and say it is or isn't a literal cord, I will say that it is true that you do have like we're all connected to the grid, so to speak, right? And in that logic, theoretically, people could have telepathic communications and stuff, all that crazy bullshit, because if we're all connected, why couldn't we do that? But there's actually lots of really good reasons why we can't do that. Theoretically, like, we are connected, like that's not, there is there are frequencies and electromagnetic grids and so many things that actually, if you could see them, you'd see that we're all kind of always touching the grid, right? And so therefore we're all connected in like a literal way. And when you start doing like magic, and now we can step away from the witchcraft now, because you understand that witchcraft itself is just a mechanic. It's just a tool you can use to manipulate things. So we can put that to the side and go, really, you want to manipulate reality. And when you were talking about manipulating reality, what we're really talking about is manipulating energy and vibrations, because that's what reality is made out of. So you want to manipulate reality, you've got to manipulate the energy, of course. And obviously there's ways to do that. So you're trying to make something happen to someone or make something good happen for you, then you're pulling on the strings of other people. You're pulling on that grid, those connections you have to those people. And if you're directly targeting someone, like a crush or an enemy or whatever, you're opening up that connection. You're saying, right, open that door and send this to them. But what a lot of people in that world don't seem to understand is it's a two-way. It's an open connection. You can't just open it for you, but like then close it and then have it still be open for them. Like, if it's open, it's open. If it's closed, it's closed. I don't really believe in closing. I just believe in no one's tampering with it. It's just still. It's just it's just floating. It's just chilling till someone intentionally, goes for it. And obviously with your friends, family, you're constantly back and forthing information through this channel. But if you're like trying to curse someone or use magic on them or mess with them, you're sending very specific energies to them. And if they themselves, this is where it gets risky, like if they themselves are aware, like people love to curse celebrities and stuff. I remember people were trying to curse Donald Trump a long time ago, and he brought out his spiritual advisor, and it was that Christian lady, I think she was Christian, I'm pretty sure, and she's like a pastor or something, and she's like blah, 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 like doing tongues and shit. And they're trying to show you something, really. Like, I don't know if he really even believes that particular belief system, but he's trying to show you that we're prepared for you to do this stuff to us. Like, we're already on this, so you've got to be careful who you're throwing stuff at, because you're opening up a two-way connection, and everyone has free will. You start attacking me with some shit, I'm not just going to immediately do what you want. I'm just going to go, yeah, what the fuck, like. But then this is the part that gets nasty. Like I just told you, these people up at the top already know this stuff. Like, this is just like, obviously, right? Like, that's what they say to each other. Well, duh. Like, but they've also taken it to the next logical level. Like, how do they, as a system, get in on that and stop people being able to open channels and threads that they don't necessarily want opened? And that's when things get messy, because without going into the technicalities and stuff that I can't even say I fully understand anyway, I can just say that they're able to mess with these channels and connections, and it probably came from olden days too. Like, these energies existed before technology, so if the king, the court, the royals had like a spiritual guy on their team and he's aware of these energies, he could just be watching the lines manually. Like, he could literally be like, oh, this peasant is just literally through vibes, because back then you didn't have shit to distract you from spiritual pursuits anyway, so you would be well tuned in if you was already that way inclined. But now they have technology, and now they know what frequencies they're looking for. They know what the electromagnetic grids are, so it's a whole different world now. So they can get in on these connections. So that's why telepathy immediately would die anyway, because they would just fuck with it. So even if you think you get into telepathic communication, it's intercepted because they're aware that that would be technically possible through these connections, and they've long, hell no. And then they create telephones where you're like, hello? Hello? Sorry. Hit my microphone. You're like, hello, like, because the telephone's shy, but they want to control how we communicate with each other. But that's a whole fucking, that requires so many framework changes fundamentally. And this is one of the things that people get stuck on, man, is history. The idea that whatever happened 500 years ago and they tell you it happened like that is just fact. How do you know books? How do you know we found goblets? Like, they're translating languages without a codex. They looked at hieroglyphs and said, what does this mean? And then just started guessing. And then they'll spin you a yarn about bullshit that for a fact is just bullshit, because they're just pictures. They don't have any basis. Like, they just started, well, let's face it, they just did what they always do and just bullshitted, and span as an agenda, right? So a lot of this historical stuff is just horseshit, because no one's here to verify any of it. And people are now arguing over World War II when the people who were alive for that just fucking have only just died, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So people are still people have already forgotten and are already changing history. And it's not even been that long, never mind 500, 1,000 years ago, right? So immediately you got to throw that shit out, because they're just lying. They don't know. They don't have any means of knowing, unless you believe they've got time machines, which they don't claim to have. They just tell you that they found the thing in the dirt and rubbed their nose on it, and how they know exactly how they used it and what it was for. Like, something might be, like, come on, you find a fork, you know what the fuck a fork is, right? But I'm just saying the grander context, and one thing I like to point out is, in history, they don't talk about us. They talk about, like, nobles, royalty, people of the court, notable individuals, right? But they don't talk about us, the regular people. What were we talking about? Because you could look at us now and be like, well, what are we talking about now? Like, all people are talking about government and, money and how to make it. Like, what were people talking about 500 years ago? They don't really talk about that. See, funnily enough, they only talk about what the kings and shit were doing and how people suffered and everyone was having a bad time. They don't tell you about, like, spiritual pursuits and knowledge. They just say everyone was like that. And then you just go, oh, okay, we all hung each other over religious beliefs. Like, how do we know? We found this book. It's in what language is it? Gibberish. Old-timey nonsense that words don't mean nothing and the language isn't even right. So, like, all of that. I know there's some, like, people say, like, there's texts, like, that are preserved, like Arabic texts and stuff. Like, I'm sure we can figure that out, and that probably is true. But then, what are those texts even saying? They're saying really highly spiritual shit. So that tells you that even though that long ago, people were already clued in to fucking non-corporeal things. But you wouldn't think that now, would you? But it's all by the by. So you're manipulating energies to change reality, and you're setting these subconscious memories, and you've got to be careful where you're setting them and how you're setting them, because things have to move, and people's free will things have to make people move. So, like, one of the tricks to, if you actually want to curse someone, first of all, accept that you're opening the connection and you're gambling whether or not they have the knowledge to send that shit right back, which you'd have to just take. And that's like so spell backfiring. I forgot to finish that. That's very, very important. Right, two things. You have to be right. I need to give you a bit more context. So when I started delving into the witchcraft side of things, how do I make things happen? I made a conscious decision to do absolutely zero protection whatsoever, right? I just was like, I'm just going to do shit. I'm going to summon spirits. I'm going to just fucking do all of it. However I feel like. And I didn't follow any plans or any doctrine. And I remember the very first thing I did was go up to the moors local to me, just like the moors, if you know what the moors are, it's just like wasteland basically. And I went up there and I had this little green candle, and I didn't do like any real research. I just sort of knew my basics, and I just thought, you know what, right? I'm just gonna go do like make good things happen, like financially. I'm drowning. This was a few years ago. I'm drowning in bills and shit. Shit's not great. So, just want to make like financially better, man. Like the typical thing everybody does. But I already kind of knew not to ask for like £1 million. I kind of knew that. I just knew to go like abundance was the word I believe I had in my head. So I did this abundance spell, like just abundance up in the Mars, and it's dark and shit. And I did it, and it was like fire everywhere. Oh fuck, and then I fucked off. And on my way up to the mall, I was in my old piece of shit car. It was a lovely car, really. Anyway, don't even want to tell you. It had the engine light on the way up, and that's part of why I was like, I'm going to go do this abundance spell. I'm sick of shit, like, kind of thing. And I did the abundance spell, and the engine light had gone, right? Which, I know it can happen. Engine lights come and go. Totally get that. This car was a piece of shit. The engine light probably should have been on. And after the spell, it just wasn't on. And I thought, can't make it up, right? So, I go maybe a month before the light finally came back on. And even though it was silly, I just took it as like, this is the thing about reality and how you're observing it. That wasn't nothing. Just because it was a silly coincidence, it's still feedback from reality itself that I drove up there with an engine light on, knowing my car was basically fucked. I park up, do my spell. I'm half out. I'm not really all that in it. I'm just trying it, and then I'm drive home. And obviously, the engine light's just gone, and I'm thinking, wow, I'd have to pay for that now. Let's see if fingers crossed. And it just didn't come back on for pretty much until I was done with the car, just like that. So, that just gave me that little nudge. Like, it's not nothing, And this was early for me. This is before I have this current, knowledge and framework I'm sharing. I'm just saying that's back when I first got into that witchcraft aspect and was studying it from boots on the ground, right? I realised, like, this wasn't nothing, but I don't think it's working the way it presents. So that's when I started going, right, summon spirits and do crazy magic, and I really got really, really out there with it. And the very first, like, I'm very sensitive to vibes anyway, right? So I started noticing, like, when I would do a spell, I'd feel everything shift. I could feel the woo. And very quickly I realised so many spells were backfiring. None of these spells were working. And and I said, right, so backfiring doesn't actually mean it didn't work. It just means it's not going to work the way you want it to. It's not favourable. All it really means is, like, you've tried to do a spell that either breaks the rule or violates someone's free will in some way, and it's coming back to you. It's well, you can't do that kind of shit. Nice try. Like, it's not something, but it's not something conscious saying you can't have that. It's literally just like physics saying you can't make that happen the way you think. So now, because you're trying to make it happen, you're trying to brute force it, as you call it. There's consequences. Like, if you push against something spiky, you're gonna pierce your hands, right? So that's the feedback. You've tried to move something and it's not supposed to move like that. So backfire. And backfiring for me, ultimately, because I didn't let spells sit too long. Luckily, I was sensitive. But I am telling you right now, it's very, very easy to not even know a spell's backfired until you're already deep in the consequences. Just because some people can get feedback immediately doesn't necessarily mean everybody can, first of all. And also, the feedback you get at first can be misleading too. It can seem like, ooh, sparkly, things are happening, and then a week later you think, man, I feel like shit. Everything's fucked. Oh, and you just feel bad. And then if you're on it, you'll go, oh, this, and then you'll tie it. You'll realize like what you did, and you'll see how that shit has come back and did you over. And then obviously then once you start seeing that mechanism, you can start accounting for it and start studying, well, what causes a backfire, what type of spells am I doing to that fuck up. And then by the end of it, I got really good at what I was doing. Like, I could make things that I wanted to happen, but a part of it is really just humbly accepting that you're not going to make $1 million just by doing a spell. That's bullshit. These celebrities will have you think, like, with their little hints that just doing a little ritual and can make things happen, but it's way deeper than that. They're doing, like, first of all, they're killing people, or at least sacrificing animals, human sacrifice, animal sacrifice. That's already fucked, because you're playing God. You're choosing what gets to live or die for the sake of your desire, which that gives it gravitas or whatever. You're killing something for your spell. But then there's also the side of that implants a deeper memory, because taking the life of like an animal's traumatic. Of course it is. Like, it's a horrible thing. So it implants a really deep emotional imprint, effectively boosting the reaction to what you've done. But I don't like to talk about that stuff too much, because I genuinely don't believe anyone should ever go there. Just because we know something can be done that way doesn't mean we should go around doing it. Some things are just better off not being done, especially if they cause you to violate something else's right to live. I understand we all have to eat meat, so killing an animal for food is one thing, but killing an animal because you want to make a couple of extra dollars is kind of fucked up. Like, it's not survival and food, it's you just trying to make yourself better off for the sake of this animal's life. You might say, what's the difference? I would say nuance and intention's the difference. You know what you're really going for. If you're just You know, you want to get money because you want to flex and you want to be this or that. You already know those things about yourself. So those things are all taken into account because they're all little tiny vibrations that factor in and amplify, especially if you take in something's life. And that's why so many spells and so much shit backfires. It's actually part of the law. That's a really fucked up thing to say about a country. It's part of the story of, I believe, Haiti with voodoo. The long and short of it is the idea that because they're using voodoo magic, which is known to be quite nasty and high intense, because obviously it's involving human sacrifice and those are really dark energies. Like you're summoning these like lower spirits that, like, you know, I know I said spirits don't exist, but vibrational concentrations do. If you're purposely trying to summon a really dark entity, then what are you really doing? You're aligning yourself with dark energies regardless of the existence of the spirit, right? You're just using it as a channel for that. So they dabble in what they would call, you know, dark magic. And the problem is it's messy. It's, you know, you're trying to brute force things that shouldn't be brute forced. I mean, while it can be like quickly impactful, especially for like cursing, it backfires incredibly bad as well. And that's why they say like, hey, you know, he's in such a bad way from years of voodoo. Now, whether that's actually true, obviously, who fucking, you know, that's beyond. But the concept is true that the backfiring can be really bad, and your intentions do factor in because they are part of the, you know, part of your potions, you know, that you're doing. And that's the concept of all of that. So the question obviously is about my personal beliefs now. How does all this tie together? It's just as simple as like, well, I say simple. It's just as simple as a fractal. It's a fractal, right? So it is that ever morphing thing, right? So what that tells me is this is a pocket of stability. This is a reality that's structured for a reason, and there's probably more realities just like this. And this reality, we have to observe what we've been seeing. There's clearly a mixture of, you know, really good things and really horrible things happening and kind of coalescing all the time, right? You know, the fact that some things can be bittersweet or something can be beautiful but terrifying, and all these different concepts, you know, like life's beautiful but bugs are terrifying, that kind of thing, right? All those concepts exist because this fabric of what this is that it contains all of those things, so they have to be expressed, if that makes sense. It's kind of like you pouring stuff into a soup and then expecting not to taste one of the ingredients, right? Like the bad is in the soup, but why does the bad exist? Well, it's kind of like the heat. Is it cold is the absence of heat and darkness is the absence of light? Well, like evil is the absence of like good, right? And that's like, you know, it's just that concept, the idea that these things have to exist for the other to exist, right? So this form of stability has to have the combination because of why ever this structure is what it is. And we can't know that from within it, which is clearly part of the design. The fact that you wake up in life completely clueless as to what life is, expected to just stumble through it, is clearly part of the design. Otherwise, it would be something else. It's part of this whole how this thing needs to be what it is. And many people have theories on that, and people claim to access stuff that we can't verify. But at the end of the day, we know logically, just that alone, that there's something going on. Like, reality exists the way it does for, like, not for a reason, because people will say, does it have to be like a reason? And I would say, no, it doesn't have to be like a easy to put in a sentence conceptual reason like that, but it exists for a reason in the form it exists in, because that's just how it fucking exists, right? It could be anything and it's this, so that's obviously a factor. But then you obviously realize it's fluid, it's morphing, changing, and that might be a big part of what the Mandela effect is. Now, I don't know, could be some time travel bullshit, could be dimensional hopping. I do believe there are other dimensions and stuff like that, but it could also just be decay of reality itself. You know, it seems silly that it'd be something like a book title or a logo, but if you think about how impermanent things are, like, it's not that impossible for those things to have just changed in reality, just like a drift, like a steady reality drift, because it's always, think about how everything works. It cells constantly renewing and die, rebirth over and over, you know, thousands of times a second, whatever, right? You know, TVs are just flashing 60 times a second. Like, it's not a consistent stream, right? So, like, it's very possible that things can just drift anyway. You know, you might think like the sky is the same blue it's always been, but like, how do you know? Like, if the sky changed color tomorrow, but you also didn't have the ability to see the previous version, like, you lost that access to that version of reality, and you just woke up and the sky was a different color, you just be like, that's what color the sky is, it was never anything else. And we use memory, obviously, as beings to track reality. But we know memory is, first of all, pretty unreliable in general. People get things wrong and misremember and think they're remembering stuff that wasn't real. But it's not just that. It's that, like, memories aren't even things themselves. Memories are just, again, a framework that you can use to rebuild a moment in your head. Reimagine it or whatever. You don't actually have an MP4 in your head of a memory, right? So drift can absolutely happen, and because your memory is just a framework rather than an exact imprint, you might think the sky is exactly the same just by the logical assumptions your brain makes without your permission. It's filtering certain stuff out at the end of the day. And that's one of the scary parts about life, is you might think you're seeing a beautiful sunset in a meadow, but really it's a hellscape. You just can't see it because you're twisted up inside by stuff, But that's just abstract silliness now. The idea is that, reality is fractal fluid, and this version of reality has these rules for its own reason, but there absolutely could be realities that have different rules entirely. And then that comes with this idea that some people believe like binary and stuff is like the end all be all, like it has to have both. But I'm a believer that while that's probably like one of the core concepts that the two coalesce, that because it's fractal in nature, that means there could be pockets, like, like when a fractal just goes all red for a second, there can be pockets of it's all just this one thing. It's all good, or it's all bad, or it's like a mixture of stuff, and it can be all those things. So the idea that they couldn't, like, so I've written here, interestingly, now that I'm thinking about what I'm about to say, but it does tie in. You could end up in like a reality, like you could, let's say you shift to a reality where you're just the color blue, right? Just the color blue. You have no sense of time, and technically you're just trapped there like forever because you don't have a sense of time, right? It's just infinite, right? So that's like a pocket of infinity inside of a moving fractal of endless possibilities, right? But it does obviously seem to be that in order for like life to life and reality to reality, that those fractals need to move, the equations need to move, they don't just freeze and stay forever. They move, they interact, and they affect each other. So that does seem to be fundamental to what we're experiencing. But again, there could just be a reality where it's all the colour blue and doesn't move and freezes, and then that would be pretty fucked, wouldn't it? How the fuck do you get out of that pickle? But maybe that's the point of a reality like that. I'm just going, we're going extra dimensional to the max. But anyway, yeah, it's all a fractal and shit. So I'm looking for my cigarettes. That's why I'm like, where the heck are my smokables? Where am I? I actually do want a cigarette. And I misplaced them. Bit of radio silence because I've been blabbing for like an hour. So yeah, obviously, to sort of wrap up my actual spiritual beliefs then, with all of that sort of in mind, yeah, like it's not as simple. It's not as simple as I just believe this thing, or I believe like the second coming of Christ, or I believe in any particular dogma or doctrine. I just, first of all, I take reality as it comes. I see what the universe wants me to see today, or what reality wants me to see today, kind of thing. But I also don't ascribe too much consciousness to the universe itself in a human way. I accept that consciousness probably stems from consciousness, but that doesn't automatically mean the consciousness is going to be a human consciousness, right? So, expecting it to comprehend the human experience, that's actually one of the themes of, Christianity, right? God would try to figure out why people keep messing up and why he's having to keep wiping his heart and stuff. So he sent down his son, aka himself, in a human form to have a human experience, to try and better understand how humans were living, because he couldn't understand why humans kept turning to debauchery and bullshit, right? And obviously they tell the story of, like, it's really funny if you think about it. So this God's come down as human, and he's going around figuring out that he's God, and then he's going around showing everyone else that he's got these powers, and it's coming from this higher place, man. I just feel it, man. Trust me, like, I know this stuff, and it's getting more and more in tune to these things. And then along comes like the government and shit, and they're just like, fuck this guy, and then they just execute him. And then, like, obviously, he comes back and flies off into the sky or whatever, but there's actually a deeper story there that they probably will highlight for you, which is the God came down in human form and the government killed him, and they made us decide that, like, they brought us into the thing. The fact that he was even going to be murdered on the table was them, but then they made us pick Who would you rather free, this dickhead or Jesus? And everyone was like, yo man, that guy's got cloud. And they freed the cloud goblin, and Jesus got murked. But so imagine what message that sent back, to HQ and all that as well. Jesus like, see ya. Second cut, yeah, maybe. Coming back pissed though, like that's probably what he'd say. But that also starts going into other things that, like, my spiritual beliefs, like, I've complicated, just basically, because they don't, it's fractal. I'm going to say that, I'm going to stop saying that probably in the next video, but this theme of this one is that it's all fractal, But yeah, there's undertones to all these stories and all these things, and it's like, yeah, like, of course, like, when you start getting that, what they call the Christ consciousness, which really just means, you start seeing life, like, it could be like this, it could be better, we could do more, we can grow as a people and shit. That's all they really mean, like, you just mean well. They come and murk you off, basically. They come fuck you over because it's not the world they want, and that's the thing that a lot of these binary people, or even a lot of these transcendent, ascended, I want to ascend in this world people will say, they'll be like, you don't even have to think about the bad. Just by thinking about the bad, you just create and attract it, because they're denying one of the fundamental parts of life, hence why they're on TikTok faking telekinesis videos, that reality is still going to be reality whether you like it or not. The rules are the rules. You can't just jump out your window and fly. You just can't do that. It's not, even if you believe with the core of your spirit that you can fly now, you're not going to fly. No one's pulled it off yet. That's bedrock, that's iron, like, and there's a reason it's iron. Yeah, and then we have these imaginations that make us think we can, I imagine that I could fly, so then if I can imagine it, and then, but we have to build gizmos or mechanisms to fly, like, we don't just jump off the ground like birds, So a lot of those people are just denying reality, that the bad does exist, because look, like, I did, like, people are just dropping, like, things are just happening, bro, like, wars are happening, and you're just like, oh, that's just the news. It's like, alright, like, but what if people are really out there getting blown up for no reason? Like, don't you feel a little bit guilty, Mr. Spiritual, Mr. New Age Spiritual? He's like, I just don't think about it, because evil doesn't exist if you don't think about it. It's like, bruh, see how they've done it, like, we gaslight ourselves now. They don't even have to gaslight us, because we just do it to our goddamn selves. But yeah, the evil is real, like, it's obvious, they're corrupt, wages are shit, people are suffering, countries are poor as fuck, can't even have electricity half the time, or most of the time, like, things are really fucked. But no, evil doesn't exist if you don't think about it, that spoiled western brat shit, and never had to lift a finger in their lives. Like, I like to say this, right, I've just come up, actually, I like to say it, like, I've been saying this the whole time. I said this today to myself, and I thought, yo, man, like, they just say, like, we're like Sisyphus, I believe is the guy, pushing the boulder up the hill, and I just be like, I'm already at the top of the hill wondering why these motherfuckers ain't got up here yet, And it do be like that sometimes, It's complicated, but the words probably speak for themselves. I hope they do. I know people's heads get scrambled big time, so these might be passing through a filter that just can't pass it, and I'm so sorry if that's you, and I hope those chains get loose, because we're going to need you, man. We need you right now, in fact, but, we can't force, we can't violate free will and make people do things they don't want to do, and not everybody wants to look at this stuff, Stuff's intense, man, like, I say this as well, like, I carry the burden of all the existential terrors all at once, like, those things plague my mind daily, like, so many existential threats and terrors just circulate, just the casual, like, I go seeking them out too, like, I find it entertaining, like, like, I'll go to, when the AI image generation was happening, I'm there trying to generate me an image that would shatter my view on reality itself, and the AI's like, I can't really do that with an image, bro. It's like, just generating blobs and silliness. It's like, yeah, like, I'm looking for, like, the fringe, not because, like, maybe that is my way of skydiving in a way, but it's not that. I'm just curious, I'm interested, I want to know, like, there's so many mysteries to life and the fabric of reality, and not everyone needs to be interested, whatever, but I am interested, and I go looking for that knowledge and that side of things, and there's a lot to be found if you go looking for it. And that's why I like to say it's bottomless, because, to be honest, like, it's a fractal, so then who knows what the heck might come out of the other side, like, by the time you've gone through the tunnel, it's already all morphed 50,000 times, so who knows what is going to be there, and if there is a there, of course, like, there's so many elements to it, but the least, I'll end on this, because it's another spiritual concept, obviously, what happens after death. And in a lot of ways, a lot of ways, I kind of feel like nothing happening at all is almost one of the most merciful options. Because if you think about the options out there, there's only like a handful that are really cool, and the rest of them kind of suck, bro. Like, especially if you look at them just in the context of like what the world believes is going to happen, like culturally and stuff. Never mind fringe things. Like, there's only a couple of them that don't actually just kind of suck, and they're hard work and shit. So I feel like for a lot of people, and probably me included, like, it just ending isn't even the worst thing. It's not the best thing though. You know, it'd be nice to have one of those, you know, narrow chance of landing in realities where it's all just nice. But at the same time, man, like, it might just be nothing, and okay, nothing's nothing. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't care, because it might not be nothing, and you should want to just feel good in life. Part of doing good things is just feeling good, feel good and light. You know, the whole Egyptian wear your heart against a feather. My heart feels light. I feel like a good person. I feel genuinely like I align with what is actually like a good energy. And I don't fear, like, the idea that my heart will be measured on a feather doesn't scare me. Not because I think my heart's literally heavier than an actual feather or whatever, but the idea that my heart will be judged on that metric just doesn't faze me, because I don't have that in my heart to worry about personally. So it allows me to then look at life like, well, it might be some good shit, and I'm not going to start being a piece of shit in a big tantrum just because it might be nothing, because nothing does nothing. There's no reason to tantrum about nothing. If you think that doing XYZ is a waste of time over nothing, then doing anything is a waste of time when it's nothing, and you don't know it's nothing. You know, you just don't. If science says it's probably nothing, brain shuts down. Fair. That's as far as we can even go anyway. We could have, you know, that's fine. Don't mean nothing happens. Like, again, if it's fractal, you might get to that very last millisecond of death, and then fractal out an entire new, you know, in reality of infinity, and never actually experience the moment of true death. It might be quantum immortality. It could be anything, man. It could be a matrix. You wake up in a pod with a tube down your throat. Who the fuck knows, man? But it could also just be nothing. And like I'm saying, nothing isn't the worst of the bunch. It's just not a great one, you know. So anyway, yeah, just there's no point me leaving you with a final thought or a warning or a message, because there isn't. Like, what's that? You know, it is what it is, man. Like, I don't know. Like, there's something just here that I feel like I just want to put that little tiny little tile in the picture, but I don't think it matters. I think the picture is painted. There's many threads though, like so many threads to this, like I say, the interpretation of religion and how you can apply it to like the actual world, and you know, identifying energies and how to separate like an external energy from an internal one, because the unfortunate catch with some of this stuff. For example, all right, let's say, you know, these are like bonus points now. But let's say, like, you know, you tune into the telekinetic side of yourself, right? And you start trying to listen out for, you know, messages through thought. Well, one of the first problems, first of all, you can communicate through more than just thought, obviously feelings and shit, and even hunger can be shared remotely, you know, you both get hungry at the same time, whatever, right? But sync up, they call it. It's all well and good listening out for other people's thoughts, but you have to first know which are your thoughts, and you have to really know what you believe. Because if you're trying to connect with somebody else, you're using the same channels that you use for your own thoughts. One of the things that most people probably don't know is that the narrative voice in your head when you talk in your head, it's actually, you know, connected to your actual voice box. It's literally, you're literally talking in your head. You know, your voice box thinks you're talking, right? So if you get a thought coming in from someone else, it still has to come through your interpretation system. So your voice box goes in response to their thought. So then how the hell do you know whose thought that was if it's using your voice? And I know people who have psychoacoustic experiences will say, well, I've heard voices that weren't mine. And I'm just going to say that that's a different phenomena. I'm talking about like when you have just like a thought and it's just words in your head. That mechanism is the speech mechanism. So you can't distinguish your own narrative from someone's implanted narrative because it stimulates the same parts. So you have to really dig down and go, where do I start and where do I end? When can I start this train of thought and control it, and when does it run by itself? And when it's running itself, are those my ideas, or is something running like a subconscious implanted thought that is trying to fuel into my... You have to be able to navigate these things mentally by yourself, because no one's going to come do it for you. Can't do it for you. I'd love to get in your head and show you what's what, but I can't. I can only tell you from where I'm standing what it's like. And I might not be the best example of a person who's got like the life together, the life together, the social life, and all these things, because I've had the difficulties and adversity I've had to face along the way with this path. But I still did the work that anybody could do if they know where to start and get going on that. So I can share you this and share you some of the framework, but I can't obviously crunch the numbers for you, man. You've got to crunch them yourself. So obviously that's, and then there's things about knowledge, like you got to be careful what knowledge you give people, because consent's big. Giving people knowledge they didn't ask for, and then it turns out that knowledge puts them on the list, ain't exactly a very neighbourly thing to do. So being responsible is a big part of all of it. So there's so many fractal thoughts. Truly, like, there's just threads upon threads upon threads of things to touch upon, and it's easy to do. It's not easy to do, but in my mind, like, I've got it in a way where I can process all these things simultaneously. Like these different ideas run at the same time. So it allows me to keep those threads managed in a way, like internally. So I'm able to connect those, like the conspiracy board with all the red string, but like my mind's got those connections. Like I don't just see a phenomena here and then hear about a thing here and keep them separate. My mind like thinks about how all these things interplay and interlink like all the time, and then we add new information, remove information, and we keep that board fluid and dynamic based on like what makes sense to this puzzle. But we don't form a puzzle. We don't decide what shape the puzzle is. We just put that there, and does that connect here? Maybe no, and we do the work to get a picture, and that's when you get to multi-morphing, multi-dimension. I'm just joking, but it kind of is as well. No, you get that from pushing to the fringes. When you push against the boundary of, like, where's the camera? A minute. When you push against the boundaries of reality, you start seeing some anomalies and some stuff, because it's not never been stable, It is stable. Sorry, stable's probably the wrong word. It is stable, but it's like a cutout of that picture with the mask, and it's like beaming like trees and niceness into a background of just like patterns and shit. It was kind of like that, and it's like here in this bit it's all stable, but as soon as you like start seeing the little seams, it's like, oh, that ain't stable. And it's all, and also reality itself really isn't stable, because if you've done psychedelics, hopefully that one of the mechanisms psychedelics is doing to you, especially like LSD, serotonin stuff, is it's actually causing your brain to turn off some of the filters. You know how you're filtering out data, and then you're seeing this, this curated reality. Well, the psychedelics can switch that off, so you start seeing the data raw. It's not about, a lot of people think it's like, I'm seeing it like more spiritually or better. It's not that. You're literally just seeing raw data and interpreting data that your brain wasn't supposed to be like handling. You're like overclocking your brain in a way, but just because you're getting more data doesn't mean it's all useful data, because there's a reason your brain's filtering shit in the first place, right? But it's kind of trippy to think that when you start seeing those moving patterns and those shapes and all this stuff, that what you're really seeing is just an unfiltered reality. It's not another dimension, it's this dimension without the curating. So that's quite powerful. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because again, like, filters exist for a reason. Like, it's a lot of data is not useful data, that's why we don't use it. But there might be non-physical entities that want to tell you about, all these concepts, and they might just be full of shit. Like, it might just be manifestations of your own brain interpreting noise as something coherent, and that's why it looks half coherent, half not. There could be a lot of mechanics at play for sure. But yeah. So spiritually, it's a wide open thing. Like, people love to close things off. Really, it's wide open, and it just goes on forever. Like, we're an hour 15 in, and honestly, I feel like I could just hit you with so many fucking things. But who's gonna sit and listen to multi-hour rant about spirituality, man. Like those days are long then. um, but yeah, so what's the message? What I said I'm not gonna leave you with one, but I kind of feel like I could hit you with something. Let me think. Like, well, I want to end kind of on, because this is like framework stuff, right? So this is something you can actually take away that's useful rather than just me saying some shit. So framework, like everyone has different goals and ambitions as far as life's concerned, right? Some people want to be rich, some people just want a nice relationship, whatever, right? And we want to get these things that we want the way we want to get them. And most of us want it quick and easy, right? I want money now, I want to make money right now, overnight, fame, whatever, right? We all want it that way, right? And it's just really just that realization, like, reality isn't listening to you the way you think it is. You are a force, and you are a powerful force, but that doesn't mean reality is just going to bend for you specifically. And no matter how much you will something, no matter how much you want something to be what it is, it won't change bedrock. Like, and that's by design, right? But some people would really, like, we've kind of been taught in a way, social media type stuff, to not question like, instead of like this idea that there's a floor, you hit the bottom or you hit the ceiling. What people do now is they hover in the middle so that they don't hit either, right? They're just like this, and they go a little bit in with some stuff and then out with some other, and they don't commit to where the bedrock is. And they're doing that on purpose, because if you navigate that little space where you're neither here nor there, then you get you can bullshit people, because it's just enough to get people to listen and care, but it's not enough to actually do anything useful with. Now, there is no bottom, but at the same time, if we play it safe, we don't ever learn for ourselves that there is no bottom. And it's all well and good pretending there's no bottom, but you need to know that there is or isn't something there, and that's where they can fill your head with shit, because your legs ain't touching the floor to find out. And all kinds of other, mental tricks and traps they've got us in. Another one is the whole trusting everything your system tells you. This is a big one for a lot of people right now, especially in the spiritual world, where they think, because they sort of think it or feel it, because they've had like a sharp reaction to something, that it must be significant in some meaningful way. First and foremost, people can trick you with that. They can like, what's it, pay attention to this, pay attention, bang, slap you with this hand, right? People can do that to you just for fun, subvert you and fuck, I just fucking blanked. I always do this. Got all too busy trying to get this cigarette, and then I just went off. So yeah, people are kind of trained themselves to just trust everything they feel, right? If I feel it, if I experience it, it must be significant or true. But people can fuck with that first of all. So then the next problem you have is your system doesn't always know what's what. For example, you've got serotonin and dopamine receptors in your stomach, but your stomach doesn't have eyeballs. Your brain has eyeballs. Your stomach is a stomach. It has food things. So, like, like there's that thing where they say you could be laid in bed and suddenly you crave a sugary snack. You're like, oh, I want that piece of cake in the fridge. God damn, I really want that right now. And your brain's going to tell you that, oh, I want that cake because I want to eat some cake. But really, it's your stomach going, give me cake and sugar, like. And your brain's just like sussing out the signal it's getting and going, I must want cake right now. But it's not actually what you think it is. It's not the mechanism you think first of all. So that's understanding what's triggering what. That's obviously an easy one. But then we get into the intuition and gut feelings. Someone says something to you and your system just reacts to it. Well, why? You don't just go, oh, that must be because it's true, or it must just be because it's right. No. That's not how. If we were all walking lie detectors, we wouldn't have politicians, bro. We wouldn't be in this world. We would be in an entirely different world, and we're not. We're in this one where people fall for fraud, scams, con jobs, everything all the time. And bullshit. We all fall for bullshit. We all bullshit each other all day. So if we were walking lie detectors, we would never, ever fall for a lie, ever. And you do all the time, constantly. And you just do. No one's a lie detector. Some people are good at reading and can suss some people out if they're really predictable or easy to read. But those are parameters. Like, it's not a fundamental fucking thing, right? We're not lie detectors. We're just people. So just because you get a strong feeling and reaction to something doesn't make it true or false or left or right. It just means you reacted. First and foremost, I react. My alarm signals went off. Why? And before you can even answer that, be honest with yourself. How many different parameters are involved in what the why might be? First of all, are you just sensitive to what they've said because you have some shit way over in your world that has nothing to do with what they, put them and their intention? Like, is that true? That might be true. That's usually where it is a lot of the time. Someone says so-and-so cheated and you got cheated, and it makes you think about your partner who cheated, and then you've triggered a whole fucking trigger, right? The synapse is fired. So just because you reacted doesn't mean it's true. It means your system found that thing interesting for some reason. And we all like to think we're big detectives who can suss everything out, but the reality is we get things wrong because we misread these signals, because sometimes we want them to mean things. If I say I want to go make $1 million tomorrow, then, I see a penny on the floor and I go, oh, a penny, like I'm going to go, oh, that's feedback because I really want this million, right? But is it? Like, it's like wherever I even go, I want it to mean that I just found a penny, like, but that doesn't necessarily even tie to that. It's just I'm just extrapolating because I'm wishful thinking. That's what it means, and it's that effect everyone talks about. I forget all the time, where you buy like a certain car and you see that car everywhere because you're tuned into it. You're locked into that vibe because that's just what you want. Like, that's where you just and it doesn't automatically mean anything significant other than you're just now more aware of this car than you were previously. It doesn't have necessarily this other meaning, right? But it also might, and you've got to discern that. And most people are not doing any discerning. They're just going, everything I feel is real, like, and it's like, nope, never. Even when you watch a movie and feel an emotion, is that real? Well, the movie was bullshit. Where's reality start and end on that one, right? Did they make you feel that, or did you feel that because you just genuine, like, think about it. They're literally spending millions of dollars to make you feel like that, but you still think that's your feeling. You don't realize that they're using tricks and stuff to implant those things into you. So if you can't even distinguish that, then you're off to a terrible start with trying to figure out if so and so is lying about so and so. You've got nothing to offer in a surefire way, right? You're not a pistol. It's not gonna be a kill every time you shoot, right? Or whatever. That was a weird metaphor, but you're not gonna get it right all of the time. And in fact, in reality, if we really look at the real effects of what we do, we realize that we might not even be right 50% of the time. Really, sometimes we get it wrong, but we'll lie to ourselves like, "Oh, I'm not wrong. It's just not manifested yet," or "I'm looking at it like, oh, I was the wrong person," or we'll just make a million fucking excuses, or it was some spirit making me think shit, or whatever the fuck bullshit we all tell ourselves when we make a mistake and don't want to admit that we were just wrong. But that's the thing, we can definitely be wrong, and we often are, because the mechanism isn't reliable like that. It's just senses. My eyes lie to me all the time, my ears lie to me all the time. I say all the time, but you know what I mean. Like, sometimes I mishear things, or someone says one thing and I think they've said another, or I think I saw something move and it was just my eyes reacting to lie. Like, things do lie. Like, the senses are not as reliable as maybe they could be, or maybe we just think they are. And then we have extra senses. People talk about extrasensory perception. Well, think about it. I have a sense of vision, and then I have a sense of hearing, but they don't just exist in a vacuum. They combine together to create my sense of reality, right? So your senses can do things that you might not realize you're doing. Like, they say dogs' sense of smell so powerful, they can smell who visited your house 2 weeks ago on the couch, whatever, right? And they can keep track of shit like that because they've got so many receptors in their nose to smell that shit. Well, you kind of have that with your receptors where, you hear like a sound, and then someone's cooking breakfast. Like, you just fucking predicted what they're doing in there without having to leave where you sat. It just doesn't look very fancy. It's not some like magic trick, but it kind of is. Like, you're using multiple senses to create extra senses. You have a sense of what they're doing. How? Because you combined your other senses together. So we all have extrasensory perception. It's just not what the movies want us to want us to believe it is. But it could, it could evolve to that one day or some shit. Like, I don't know the rules of, long-term reality. Like, I just know right now we can't levitate because physics says, like, we have to figure out a way to propulse ourselves to defy gravity, to push against gravity, which we can't do just with what's already on our bodies, right? So yeah, being honest with yourself and being honest about what life is, or not what life is, but what you're seeing from life is big too, because we like to bullshit ourselves so much. It's that logic of, like, you see a tree and I see a tree, but are we both seeing a tree, or are you seeing a big lump of wood with its roots and I'm seeing like a multicellular organism vibrating? Like, we're seeing a tree, but it doesn't mean we both see the same thing, right? And one of us is being more honest than the other anyway, or more accurately in that scenario, one of us has a different framework of seeing reality than the other one, and both can be right, but they're just right on different levels. And that guy with the tree and roots will fight to the death. It's just a big piece of wood with roots. But then the guy who's seeing the multicellular organism will go, well, no, it's this shit, and they'll fight to the death over that, not knowing that both of them were technically right and neither of them had the full picture, Which goes back to the comparison thing of, that's why there's no point comparing what you see and what I see, because we're not seeing the same thing. Like, we can compare notes. Like, if we both see an incident, you was wearing a blue shirt. Yeah, I saw a blue shirt. We can do that, but, like, you can't see what I actually saw when I saw the blue shirt. We're just using language to find that common ground and say that we confirm. See, it's funny, we have to, like, confirm we both saw the same thing verbally. Like, you see that? Yeah, I saw that. What did you see? Let me just, it's important to be on the same page like that. We have to verify, otherwise we get massively out of sync. You'll be like, oh, I just heard a giant kraken just exploded in the ocean. I'm like, no, that was thunder, bro. Like, we can get really separate really quickly on what we think's going on. Hence our different cultures form, obviously. So it's important to remember all of that's still true, man. It's all still true. It's happening right now, and it's manipulated, and you can't just trust blindly what you feel, because what you feel can be fucked with, and you can't tell. Even with the best of intentions, it can be really fucking hard to distinguish between what's one or the other, right? You can learn to get better and better and better and better at it, and I know people will claim to have that, and that, then they go out and do cruel shit or bully people, so, like, no one really has it 100%, right? But the reality that we've got to be honest about is nobody's a lie detector and nobody's got it right. And there's so many reality breaking things that happen that people just avoid, like, your favorite celebrity turns out to be a creep, or, like, some shit like the government's actually purposely taking handouts to avoid raising wages, stuff like that, right? There's, like, so many things that if people just were honest about and actually looked at would just shatter the current way things just work just by the thoughts alone. Hence why they don't want these thoughts circulating, but reality is reality, whether we like it or not, But they want to be the people who tell you what reality is. They don't want you to do it boots on the ground out, because they hate it. Like, they hate the idea that people like us can learn this shit and understand shit and be anything or do anything, because it contrasts their version, which is most of them were just born into it, or just had it handed to them, or the gates were opened, like, because they had insider access or whatever, right? So then the idea that someone who has none of that comes along and then just, like, does a thing, they hate that. They can't, people think it's racial, and I'm sure there's racial stuff going on for sure, but it's not just that. It's literally classism. Like, you are like, what do they call it? Like, non-special. We're special and you're not. So therefore, if you do anything special, we're going to call it not special, because we don't want you to be special. And if you do manage to break through and do something special, we're going to bring you into us and pretend like you're just one of us, kind of thing. Because no one outside of this is allowed to be special, right? And that's what they believe. So they don't want us. It's not just that they don't want us to figure them out, but they just don't want to see us do well, because then it violates their dogma, their belief that we're lesser than them. But if we're cognitively matching them, then that pisses them off, right? How dare this thing think it's anything close to what I am? It's like, well, fuck you. Like, who are you? Like, but arrogance rules, People get gassed up really quickly. Oh, I've got all this really nice stuff. That must mean I'm just manifesting fantastically, right? God must love me. But God and manifesting isn't really anything to do with free will and how things actually move in reality. And that's where we've got to be honest. Manifesting $1 million isn't going to happen because no one's going to come and give you $1 million without you actually doing something, offering something, you know. Can't just will it into existence. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've pretty much covered this topic. Well, I haven't, obviously, because I could just go on forever with some of these things. But this is pretty lengthy, and I think it's probably better to now move things to the next question, whatever and whenever that may be. So, there we are. That was another one. Give a question down. The answer is it's complicated. Peace out, people. Appreciate the view. Well, as in you watching. I don't care about the number on the screen. Otherwise, I won't be doing this. Peace. Peace, peace, peace.